Welcome and thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe to the channel so that you get all the videos that I upload. Please give the video a thumbs up and please share the video. In this video, I will take you through a cinema ticket exercise that requires an understanding of arrays and will show and demonstrate the importance and the use of parallel arrays. Let's get into the question. So the question reads, a local cinema wants a system to sell tickets for their movies. The system must prompt the user to enter the customer name, the number of tickets bought, and the seating code, which can either be A, B, C, or D, as shown in table 1 below. So in table 1, it shows the prices of the seats. So if you choose seat A, you must pay 350. If you choose B, 200, C, 150, and then D is 90 rands. Then it says for each customer, the amount due must be calculated and the customer's name must be added to an array that can store a maximum of 40 customers per movie session. And the number of customers must be counted. The system must not allow customers to buy tickets once full capacity is reached. At the end of the movie, one lucky customer must be randomly chosen from the names in the array to win a prize. Display the total amount made per section, the overall total for all the sections, and name of the lucky winner. Quite a couple of things that are needed there. And then we are given a sample of how the output should look like. So we have two people who bought the tickets for this movie session, quite a low attendance. So we had enter name, Vuyo, and then the code that they chose is B. Enter the number of tickets, 3, and then 3 times 200, that would be 600. So that is the amount that we have to calculate firstly. And then same thing here, the name, lucky, section, and then 5, and then 90 times 5, that will be 450. Then for section A, there were no tickets bought, so the total there is 0. For B, it was 600, 0, so, and then for C, 0, and then the total would be then 1050. And then the lucky winner, I guess, randomly chosen, it was Vuyo. So this is how it should look like. Now, let us then start solving the problem. I will use VS Code as always. I'll create a class, a file here. So I'm just going to call it cinema system. Cinema.cpp. Right. So obviously I will need the first library, which is our IOStream, for displaying and the input from the user. Just going to define that namespace here using namespace std include hashtag, and then int main. Just going to return 0. Right, let's begin. So just to recap a little bit before I start, the system must prompt the user to enter the name, number of tickets, and the seating code. So let us start here with this 3. Right, so I'm going to go on and then declare, because with cin it has to be returned into a variable. So we'll have a string, which is our name. Don't have to declare that because we will override it every time. I mean, you don't have to assign because it will be overridden every time. And then we'll need int number of tickets. Just going to write those in full. And then last but not least, we will need the code. so it's only a single character. So I'm going to use a char, and I'm going to say section. So those are my 3 variables that need to be used. So I need to prompt the user now. So cin the name, but I'll need to tell them. So I'll go cout, and then I'm going to come and copy this here. So they've made it easier by giving me that sample. And then I'm going to make it a space. Then end. I'm going to take the input on the same line. So on the cout, there is no end line, so that the cin could be written on the same line with that. Then I'm going to duplicate that 3 times. So the next one is to enter the code. Copy that. Enter the code. And then the last one is to enter the number of tickets required. And then here it's going to be the number of tickets. And then here it's going to be the section. Alright, so there we've prompted the user to enter their details. The next part is to calculate the amount that is due, but not only calculate but then display it. I am going to display cout amount due. So I'm just going to give it a variable as well, although it's not necessary. Int let me just say it's cost. This is how much they have to pay. But for me to calculate the cost now, I need to then use the table. So there are a couple of ways that I'm thinking of that we can do this. Is either using an if or a switch. At this point, I will use a switch statement. So I'll just write it right here. So switch, and then I'm going to take the, I think I have swapped these statements here. So this one should be here, and then the section should be up here. Then I'm going to take the section, and then for case when it's A, I would like to calculate the cost by saying the cost will be equals to the number of tickets times, I believe that was 350, and so that will give me the cost if you buy as tickets for seat A, and then that is it. So for code A, which is a char, that's why it's complaining, so it must be inside single inverted commas. So for A, we will then, if this is A, it will meet this case, and then the cost is obviously number of tickets times 350, because seat A costs 350. Then we'll have to account for the other 4. I'm going to duplicate this 4 times. So we'll have B here, we'll have C here, and then the last one would be D. And then here, I think it was 250, and then here it was 200, and then the cost of the last one was 90 rands. Let me just double check. Okay, 200 and 150. Wow, 200 and 150. Okay, there. So now I will take the section, number of tickets, and then according to the code that you had selected, I will then calculate your total cost. Once that is done, I will then cout this here. Amount due is cost. Right, that looks good. It's complaining about what? See out return. What? Okay. So I've got the names, I've got the cost, I've got the sections, and then this part here should be complete. So now what I'm going to do as I solve this problem, I'm going to go step by step, which is just also demonstrating how you should maybe approach problems, right? There's no need to see the problem all together at once. If you can do that, that's awesome. But it is also just nice to just take apart the problem so that you as you get the parts right, you are also getting more confident in the code you are writing. Because if you write everything all at once, when you run, it might have a couple of errors. It might be difficult to then debug a code with a lot of lines. Instead of just writing this small part, I'm going to run this code now and test it. If it works, I then expand. I will take that approach, because the first part, as you saw, my aim was to collect that data and then calculate the amount due. That's the first part. So I'm just going to take this data here just to make sure I'm doing the right thing. So I'm going to run that. So I'm going to write my name, King. I'm going to take, I think it was B, and then I'm going to require 3 tickets and then 600. So what I've left is the R now. C, I need the R. Okay, perfect. Run one more time, and then I think Jake, I think it was D, with 5 tickets, 450. All right, so that looks good. Now the problem then continues and say, and the customer's name must be added to an array that can store a maximum of 40 customers per session, and the number of customers must be calculated. Okay, but on the output I don't see where we are displaying the number of customers, but we could do that. And then the system must not allow the customers to buy tickets once the capacity is full. At the end of each movie, one lucky customer must be randomly chosen from the names of the array, and then display the total amount per section, and then the overall total of all the sections, then the lucky winner. So from this last part now, you can see that we need to store the names of the customers who are buying the tickets, and then they must be 40. Then we should also calculate the number of tickets. That's fine. Or the number of customers, I mean. Then we should calculate the total amount. So we'll need to store all of these. We'll need to store the names, the number of tickets, which will tell us the number of customers. Because if one customer buys 5 tickets, it means then there will be 5 people who are attending. So on that part, I'm not sure whether we are calculating the people who are buying or the people who will be attending. But I guess when it says calculate the number of customers, it means the people who are buying. So it will be the names, it will be the array names dot size that will give us the number of customers. Then to get each section, we will then need to store the section and the total amount, which is the amount due. So we need 3 arrays. Now the first one, so that we don't get confused, will be the names. So I'm going to declare an array. It should be of type string, because an array can only store one type of variable, so that will be names. And then you are given the maximum number it should store, that is 40. Then we will need to store the sections, because we need to calculate the total amount per section. So we will need char, I will say sections. It will be exactly the same size because we can't go above 40. That's the maximum. And then of course it will be int. I am reluctant to continue with int, but whenever you deal with money, you should always use a double. But here I've just made a quick assumption when I was reading here that since these are all whole numbers, and then obviously people will always be whole numbers. When you multiply a whole number with a whole number, you'll get a whole number. So it will always be an integer. However, when you are using money, right, you have to use a decimal, because money can be 1 rand 0.5 or 1 rand 50 cent, 1 rand 30 cent, 253.55, which is a valid value. But in this case, because our prices are all whole numbers and then we are multiplying with whole numbers, we'll always have integers. But just a general advice and a general rule, whenever you deal with money, use a double type. So that will be, I will say, the amount. That's a terrible name, but that will do, amounts. There you go. So we've got the 3 now. So every time we take in the name, the surname, and then we have calculated the cost, we need to then store that user's details. Now this is where now the concept of parallel arrays come from, because we have different types that we need to store. An array can only store one type, right? As you can see, name can only store strings, char can only store chars, int or amounts can only store ints. Now you need to make sure that when we store, the data of each person, which will be the name, the section they picked, and the amount they paid for the tickets, they have to be on the same position. That is the concept of parallel arrays. You will realize that this should run in a loop, so that now we can have multiple people buying the tickets, number one, and then number two, we can have the position, because to store this data now in an array, we need the position, and the loop will give us the position. So what I will do is that I will make this a while loop so that it runs infinitely, but it must run for a maximum of 40 times, of course, right? Because that's the max, it can't go above 45. So I'm going to say while in fact, let me use for a for loop, because it's simpler, because I already have the start and end point. So I'm going to say pause. For position, it must start at 0, because the position of arrays start at 0. The position must never go above 40. So that is less or equals to. Now there is a very C++ is making stuff hard here, but to get the size of an array, you need to go size of, and then pass in the array, which I'm just going to use amounts because they are all same size. You need to divide by size of the type the type which is stored in amounts, which is int, or you can put an actual value there of type int or 0. Then you need to then increment your position so that it goes from 0, 1, 2, 3 up to 40, storing each user as they input. So the first thing that the user needs to do is to, of course, enter their details. There, they will enter their details, and then every time a user enters their own detail, it will override whatever was in name, right? Whatever was in section, whatever was in tickets. Then we need to go on and calculate their cost, which is this part here. Cut, paste here. Then we need to then show the amount that they need to pay. Then once all this is done now, we need to then store their information. So we need to go to names, and then on this position, store their name, and then we need to go to the sections, same position, because now we know that on the 0th position, all the data in the different arrays corresponds to the same person. So we'll need to store the code or the seed that they've chosen. So that will be the section. Then we go to the cost. I think, did I say it's cost? Amounts, and then on the same position, we need to then store, what are we calling this one? Cost. We need to store the amount that they need to pay for the tickets. So there now, this combination will give us the total costs, because we'll just iterate through those arrays and sum all the sections. If wherever we find A, we then add all that money, which will give us A's. And then for B's, same thing. For C's, same thing. For D, same thing. So the combination of the two will give us the cost per section, and then we'll obviously add all the numbers here, which will give us the total now that we've made over the two. There's something very important then that I wanna look at, but let me just maybe firstly write the code as simple as I can, and then we'll go over the semantics to make sure that everything works accordingly. Now we've stored everything, so the next part now would be to then get to this part, that at the end now, when we have either reached the full capacity or the movie, I guess the movie is done, or we stop collecting or selling tickets, then we get to this part now where we need to show the sections total amount that was collected per section. Now let us do that. So that does not need an array, so it's C out that section, and then the amount. So now the question is, how do we then get the amount made in section A, right? So we will need to put that in here. Right, so let us calculate the amount now. So what we need is another variable. Let's just say amount section A. Yep. And then we'll need section B, C, and D. B, C, and D. Now, how do we calculate those? We need to then iterate through this array, and everywhere where we get A, we need to then add to this A, and then whenever we get B, we need to store on B, C, and D. So I am already seeing that using this switch again. So what I'm going to do is to copy that. Then we will need another for loop. So we'll need a for loop. And then this for loop will do the same thing. It will start from position 0, and then it has to end on the size of the array. Then we need to increment our position to go from 0 to the last element of the array. Now I'm going to copy that and paste it here. So as I was looking at this now, I'm realizing that, so there are two ways of writing this statement here. Since the size here is 40, it means that our position, they start from 0 to 39. So now this will start from 0 and it will go to 40 because of that equals to. And then on position 40 we don't have anything. So it's either you say less than 40, which will fail when position is 40 and go out of the loop, or you can put the equals to back but subtract 1. So that when the position is 39, it will be met by the equal sign, so it will get the last position. And then when this is 40, it will fail because 40 is not less nor equals to 39, because that is 40 minus 1. So I'm going to include 1 here as well, consistency. Now we will be going through this loop here, this array. I mean, we will be going through this array. So we will say, give me the code, which is the char, right, is equals to sections at position. So this will give me the code. Then I will need to check the code. When the code is A, what I want to do is to add up the amounts for section A. Now I'm just going to use the shorthand addition operator, which will add, right? So what this does is that, okay, let me write it out in full first. Copy, paste, plus. Now as I've said, that remember the position, they are the same throughout these three. So when I get the code for position 0, if this is 0, the amount that corresponds to this code is in position 0 in amounts. So now I need to then take that amount at position and add it to the amount I have. So I'm going to just make sure that these are defaulted to 0 so that we don't add anything else to the money besides making sure that it is the actual values. Because now if the compiler assigns a random number instead of giving it 0, then our answers will be wrong. So now it starts from 0 and then we just add on 0. It will give us the actual amounts on those arrays. Then it is the same statement throughout. Copy, paste here, paste here, paste here. And then of course when it's D, we need to use the variable for D. When it's C, we need to use the variable for C. When it's B, we need to use B. There you go. Now we have the total amount made per section. Oh, this is B, this is C, and then there is D. There. That will then give you the amount made per section. I have my amount now, which is section A. Save that. And then you already know, I'm going to duplicate that 4 times. B, C, and D. Then come and fix here as well. D, C, then B. So now I have all the amounts that I need per section. Then I want the total cost now. And the total cost, which is all sections combined, I will copy this string, copy, and then I'm going to duplicate one more time, add this string here. So this will be all section combined, and then it will be the addition of these 4. So that will be A plus B plus, and then C plus. That will give you the combined total now for all those 4 sections. As you can see, I'm adding all of them. Then the last part would be to randomly select the winner now. That is a quite bit of an implementation to do. So I'm going to first check if calculating the totals per section and the overall is working as expected, because we've added quite a lot of logic. So let us test that. So our test data will remain what we use. So it will be Vuyo B and 3 600. Yep. Then it will be Lucky D, and then 5, which is 450. And now you see, this is the part now where I was talking about that. So I will need to include 40 customers now in order for this to stop and go out of the loop, right? Which is fine, because that's the max. But what happens when only 2 people buys the tickets for that movie session? Maybe it's not a busy season for the movies, and then we have only 2 people that came and bought ticket. At least there'll be 8 people in total watching. So what I will do now is to add another condition to say the system, just like it says here, right, that the system must not allow customers to buy ticket once the capacity has been reached. So it means that the system has a capability of stopping the purchase, right? So now what I'm thinking is that when we have reached a capacity of 40, the system needs to shut down or stop, or just give us the output now, the sales of each section and the overall. And then also you need to have the capacity. Maybe there are only 3 people that bought, and then at the end of the movie we then need the system to give us the sections that we sold and the amounts. So there needs to be that capability. Now since I'm running a loop, this is the loop that does the recording. So now you need to be able to break the loop, right? What I'm going to do is that this is the first one that is entered or taken. So my system will take the character C. Once you put in C as your name, it means that you are telling the system to break, which means the system must stop, right? So what I'm then going to do is then to say, put an if statement here, say if the name is equals to C, capital letter C, or maybe let's say small letter c, because capital letter C you're already using, then I want to break the loop. So this is the keyword for breaking loops. So this will break out of the loop. That break statement terminates the loops. It does not go to the next iteration, it just goes out of the loop. So once you now enter C, it will then break the loop and show you the sales. It will come here, right? It will try to calculate, but now the issue is here, that since here it ran maybe let's say twice, right? When it comes here, it will want to run 40 times. Now that is not a good solution, because on the other 40 parts now, there is no valid data, right? We did not store anything. Let's say we terminated after 2 users bought the tickets, or only 2 users bought the tickets. There's no need for this to run past the first position, because the only data that's valid is on the 0th and first position. So now it means that the end position of this for loop depends on how many users we have recorded here. So I'm going to change that now, and then I am going to declare another variable. I'm just going to call it a counter. Start at 0, and then every time I don't break, which means I have a valid data, I want to calculate or to increment by 1. My counter will tell me how many users were recorded. So every time I record a user, this will be incremented by 1. And so now my loop will run counter minus 1. Because if there were 5 users, the counter will be 5. And then obviously an array starts at 0. So that will be, it will have to run from 0 to 4 instead of 5. That's why the minus 1 there. Now, this now will not go to positions where there is no data. Then it will calculate everything that was recorded on the positions, and then it will give me the output. So let us try that again, because now for this run we will need to insert 40 users. That's a lot. Okay? We don't have time for that. Clear, and then I've saved. Let us run again. Okay, so the name is Vuyo. Section B, 3 tickets, 600, yep. Then we have Lucky. Section D, and then 5 tickets. Now, I want to terminate the system now. This is how the system works. You put in C, and then when you enter, as you can see, it has terminated the system, and now it goes to give you the overalls of each section. Now there's a couple of things I'm seeing here on my output. If you look at the output sample, there's a space between every user. Now there's no space on mine. As you can see, it's very clustered. So the first thing that I need to solve is that between each user, after this, I need to have a space. So I need to then see out another n line, which should give me a space in between. Then what I'm noticing again is that on my overalls, there is no space here as well after I terminate. So I will need a space before I see out, or a new line, I mean. Now n line will add me a new line there. Then there's an equal sign, and then there's a R which I'm missing. So I need an equal sign and R. Copy those. Then oh God. And then right, now everything should be fine. Then there's no space, or there's an equal sign and R on this one. There's an equal sign and R. And for whatever reason, between this 1000 and that, there's a space, which I think is a typo. There's no space here, but we'll copy it exactly as it is. So let us try that one more time. Run. So I'm sure you already know the input as well. Fuyo B3. There is the space now. That n line is giving me a new line, which makes the space between the two datas, right, or two inputs. Lucky is taking section D, 5 tickets. Then small letter C will terminate, meaning that there is no more customers that will buy now. Maybe it's the end of the movie, or it's after a certain time, according to the rules of the cinema. Then we have 0 for section A. No one bought section A, as you saw. We have 600 there. We have 0 there. We have 450. Then the total. So as you can see, that is working as expected. Right? Now, let us select our lucky winner. So this lucky winner must be selected randomly. Right? Now, that calls for us to use a random number generator to generate the position and then get whatever name is in the random position generated. So now, first thing is first, that you need to know about the random. There is a rand function that is given to us to generate random numbers. And then for it to really be random, because based on the seed that you put in, you can know exactly what random numbers are going to come. But if you use the time function, which you will never know which second, because the seconds are changing all the time in milliseconds, it is a realistic random number generator. Now, on that time, so the srand is the one that takes the seed. The time is the one that generates the seed. A seed is a number. So you put 0 there. And then this is complaining because it needs the time header file, right? So you would need to then include, #include the time.h header file. So that now should stop complaining, which it does. Now I expect this one, or this one, it's also included here from what I see, but let's run. It should give us an error because this is in the I think it's in the cstd-lib. So let us see. It ran. So it means it is included in those header files, but what I understand is that it is in the include cstd lib header file. Yes. So now you can then get your rand function and your srand function from those header files. Then we will generate the position. Once we get the position, we then go to the names array and view our lucky winner that is randomly selected. So now the question now becomes, again, we have only 2 users on the array. How do we make sure that the random number generated is within those 2 numbers, or between the minimum, including the minimum, and the maximum position? Which means in this case, because I've been using 2 input, only the 0th and 1st position have the data. So how do we do that? Is that okay? At the end now, where we need to select, we need to then get our random, let me just say winner position. Yep. Is it because the rand function now only returns an integer. So we'll say rand, that will give you a random number, and it can give you a random number anywhere between 0 and the maximum value of the type int. So now to make sure that it is within the positions that are available. Remember, we have already sorted out, making sure that we have only the positions that we have populated or assigned, which here it will be counter incrementing every time we add data. So because we added 2, counter will be 2. Now coming to this function now, the mod of this rand will make sure that the number that is supplied by that operation, now the combination of the mod and your max value, which will be counter, it will generate only numbers between 0 and the counter -1. This is known as the max, right? The max or the higher limit, right? So the function, or maybe when you look at one of my videos that I've made, it will be limit or higher limit -1. So meaning that if you have 5 here, it will generate numbers between 0, including 0, and 4, including 4. 5 will not be part of that generation, right? It is the maximum and it is excluded. So which is good now for our problem, because 2 is not a position in our array, a valid position I mean, because the first entry is stored in position 0, then the second entry is stored in position 1. So this will work perfectly for this problem. It's the perfect solution, because if that is 2, it means that now the possible numbers that can be generated by this combination, not by the random function, but by rand mod 2, will be 0 and 1. That's it. As I've said, it generates limit -1. So counter will be the perfect solution, right? So now we have there, it is the position of our winner, randomly selected because we don't know what that will be. So we are then going to say cout, copy the string so that we are quick, and the lucky winner is, then the names array, give him the position, which is the winner position. We don't need to even end line on this one, but we can just end line so that the 0 end line. All right, there you go. So that is the full solution now, even though it is all written in main. I am very aware of that. So enter, let's go Vuyo B, and then 3, and then we've got lucky, we've got I think it was D, we've got 5, and then we terminate. Oh, the lucky winner is lucky, in this case not Vuyo, but there you go, right? As you can see, it generated 1, and then the lucky winner is lucky, so the prize will be received by luck. But there's a space in between here, so again, before we display that, we need to give it a new line. Then the solution is complete. Now let us try to add maybe a couple of users, maybe a couple of customers, maybe let's say 4 more customers. Let's run that so that we choose all the sections now, and maybe choose 2 or 3 twice or more. So I'm going to say, I don't know the names, I'll say Vusi A, it needs only 2 very expensive seats, 700, 350 times 2, that's good. Then we've got Lucky again, he's back for another movie, he's upgrading now to B or maybe C, and then he wants 3 tickets. And then we need who else is here? Pearl. What does Pearl want? Seat section D, and then hello. Tough times, 90 rand. And then we've got who? John taking on B. And then how many tickets? Let's say 3. And then so we've got all the sections now. I'm just going to include 2 so that we can see our addition functionality per section if it does work. So D, I will take 2. The name is D. 1 section D, 1, 2, 180. Then I will take the last one. Which one is the lowest? 200. Simple math. B. Who's buying? Me is buying. Okay, let me give it a real name. I'm running out of names here. Say Obim, D, and then I'll say 5, 450. Then I will put C to terminate the system. So now I've got D multiple times. Okay, I need at least B or C. Okay, let me not terminate yet. I'll go with Tabo. Take on B. Maybe buy 3 tickets. Just get 1. 200. Yep. Then I'll terminate. So now we just need to confirm first per section. So A, there was only 1 A, which was 700. There is 700. And then for B, there was, this is disturbing me, there was B for 600. Then there was B for 200. That is 800. Correct. Then C, I think there was only 1 C bought. Then the most bought seat was D. It was 90 plus 180, which is 270, plus 200. Wait, what is that? 90 is D, and this D, that's 90 plus 180, which is 270, plus, I thought it was 200. Was confused how it got to 700. Okay, plus 400. All right, 720. So that looks okay to me. Then the addition now of all of that, I would need a calculator quickly. 700 plus 800 plus 450 plus 720, 2,670. And then the lucky winner is position 4. It's not position 4. Let's say 0 position, first, second, third, fourth, fifth position was randomly selected, and then this was the last 6th position. So that is how you would then solve the problem. Now what I'm going to do, because I've written the code, all of the code in main, which is not a good way of writing code, but as a beginner, that is fine. This is working. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to make this a part 1 so that it's not too long. And then I'm going to make a part 2 where I now refactor the code, right? That is also part of programming, right? Producing a solution quickly and then taking a step back when you have time and just improving your code. Refactor, write it. Maybe there are a couple of parts you can always improve. So I hope you understood the code. I hope you saw the use of parallel arrays, right? Everything else is just part of the code, but what I wanted to show you was the arrays, how to use and access an array, how to manipulate array. As you can see, this is all array manipulation right there, right? Multiplying the values in an array, adding all of that, and the position, playing with positions, because you need to understand the loops and position of an array to write the types of solution where multiple data is recorded and it must be kept so that it is used over and over, right? I hope you understood the solution. Let me end part 1. I will then record a part 2 to improve the code. I'll see you on the part 2. Thank you for watching.